call the roll.
Alderman Ames. Here. Alderman Catalano.
Here.
Alderman Curiali.
Here.
Alderman Jacob. Alderman Messina. Alderman Sizmarsky.
Here.
Alderman Woods.
Here. Next, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes from October 27th, 2022, Planning, Zoning, Building Committee minutes.
So move.
Second.
Are there any questions? Yes, I have some questions. Okay, what do you have?
Mute. Hit the mute button.
I was going through the minutes, and they were a little light, and I didn't have time to type up all the things, but there were a lot of good questions that were asked by Alderman Jacob, Alderman Ames, myself, that never made it into the minutes. So I would request that we review the tape and add some of those in, which had to do with the flooding and how they were going to take care of that, some of the building, the heating, I can, yeah, copy it and line it and maybe send it to you. So, what do we got to do? We got to make a motion to table. Yeah.
Make a motion to table it.
Second. Yeah, I'll agree.
Okay. All in favor to table the minutes?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, they're tabled. Next, report and recommendation. The screen switched while I was
Amendments.
speaking. Yeah. Review and approval of amendments to the Unified Development Ordinance, UDO, in case CDC 2022-0005.
So move.
Second.
Ms. Winger, did you have anything to say?
Oh,
Or Winger?
Yes.
why not?
Springer?
Springer.
yes, Chairman Woods. I have a very brief presentation to go over some amendments to the UDO. Can you hear me?
I don't think that's on. Jeff, is that on? No, it's red.
Okay. It's okay. So as you'll remember, the new UDO was adopted in May of 2022, and since then we found a few items that need some clarifying, some Scrivener's errors, and three other items. One is clarifying the definition of community residence. The second is clarifying the fence regulations heights for front yard fences, and the third is clarifying the primary exterior materials, all of which are covered in the UDO. For the first one, it's clarifying the definition of a community residence. It's currently unclear because the definition of a community residence is defined as a state licensed facility. But not all community residences are required to be state licensed. So we're striking the word state licensed from the definition and then making the licensed residences permitted uses and the unlicensed residences special uses. The second item is for a conflict in fence height. My understanding is during the discussion related to the UDO, the idea was to make the front yard fences be no greater than 3 feet in height. Well, the chart was changed in the UDO, but there's a couple references in the language that weren't changed. And so this actually corrects it to the 3 feet that was intended, and so it matches the chart that's elsewhere in the chapter. The third item is related to durable primary materials. Now, this provision used to previously be located in the local amendments for the building code. It used to say 85%, and it used to say that you excluded windows from the calculation. So if your facade, for each wall, you had to have 50, well, now it's 50%. We changed it to primarily, which means 50% or greater, primarily stone or brick. And if you were to take the whole front of a building and require 50% of it to be stone or brick, and you left the windows in on the calculation, you're actually automatically increasing the amount of the frontage that needs to be covered with brick and stone. So the way the language used to be in the old building code amendment was that that windows were excluded from the calculation. So all we're doing here is matching with the prior language that windows would be excluded from the calculation when it comes to determining the amount of the surface or the facade that needs to be brick and stone. The last items are really just Scrivener's errors. The first one is eliminating a duplicate word. The second one is adding Town Center Business District. That section actually relates to site plan review, and site plan review is also allowed in the TCB. It just wasn't reflected here. The next one was a typo, number 4. Again, really just clarifying, no substantive changes. For number 5, it was an error that's being corrected to, so it matches the bulk table. And the other was, number 6 was a typo, and number 7 was a typo as well. So just some minor revisions to the UDO. Please note that as we're using the new code, we're coming across these things where they might conflict or there were errors that were not corrected. So we'll be planning to bring forward more in probably the first quarter of 2023. As we come across them, you'll see us bringing these every once in a while. And that concludes my presentation, Chairman.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Sure, I have one. Going back to community residents, right? So there's 2 classifications, licensed and unlicensed. So in the definition above, community residence, a single dwelling unit occupied on a relatively, so we're taking out the reference to licensed, but shouldn't we just add licensed or unlicensed in there?
Our
Because
attorney.
taking out licensed almost seems as if then it's not applicable to the licensed section.
And that's where the clarification is in the use table. We could actually change the language to community residents, comma, state licensed, and community residents, comma, state, or not state licensed, to be clearer. But rather than creating a second identical definition that just says not state licensed, it seemed clearer to our attorneys to go ahead and propose it this way.
But couldn't you just do that? You don't have to create a whole nother, well, all right.
I suppose the answer is we could go either way.
Yeah, I mean, I'm reading it and going, we'll be back here in a year to amend that, but, okay. Any other questions? There being none, I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Oh, did we? Well, there you go. See how efficient we are? We're getting it done. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That passes. Next items to be considered for future meetings, Building Code Amendment December 8th, Marino's relocation winter 2023, and Data Center Route 83 January. Is there anything anybody else would like to put on the agenda? There being none, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
So move.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned.
Call to order the Public Health, Safety, Judiciary, and Ethics Committee. The minute taker reflective, everyone's still, oh, Peter Jacob has joined us?
Yes.
Okay.
Go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Need approval of minutes for October 13th, 2022, of the Public Health, Safety, Judiciary, Ethics Committee's meetings.
I'll make the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We have a report and recommendation for an intergovernmental agreement with the DuPage Emergency Dispatch inoperable radio, or interoperable radio system equipment between the Emergency Telephone System Board and the City of Wooddale. That's my motion.
Second.
Go ahead, Chief, you got it?
Yeah, so the current radios have been in effect since 2012. They've reached the end of their useful life with Motorola. ETSB negotiated a new contract with Motorola for the interoperability countywide to keep us all together on the same radio system. ETSB has covered the cost of the radios throughout the entire county, and the airtime at $34 a month for the last 10 years, saving agencies quite a bit of money. New radios are smaller, a little bit thicker, new technology that has GPS built into them that allows for tracking of the individual officer. This new radio came out in 2019 with a estimated 10-year useful life. No end-of-life date has been set yet for these radios. Total cost of equipment, ETSB is covering 85%. City of Wooddale will be covering 15%.
Anybody have any questions? Alderman Jacob?
Yeah, just when I was reading the information, it sounded like there's actually GPS on there, so if an officer's in trouble, you can actually track the officer? Or
Yeah, so there's GPS built into these, so dispatch will be able to pinpoint an approximate area where the officer is. The LCD screens on the radios themselves are bigger, so any officer can pull up and see where other officers are in the area.
Okay, and then it also talked about like a phone feature or something?
Yeah, so they've got LTE built in, so if you lose your radio signal, if you're in a building and you lose the actual radio signal, it'll switch over to a cell signal, so your radio traffic still gets out.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor?
For the motion, shouldn't we have a not-to-exceed amount of $42,768.44 in there?
I think so.
Is there a seconder and then both petitioner agree?
You're the motion.
Yeah, no,
Absolutely.
you can amend that then to,
Well, I mean, when it comes to money, we always have to have it in there.
well, that way we can have a roll call too, so. Any good, Alderwoman, any names?
So with the new radios, does that come with all the new chargers and charging stations, and so there's
That
no
cost-
other expenses
That-
besides the monthly?
That cost includes the radios, the equipment, the chargers, everything.
Thank you.
Alderman Jacob?
With all the old radios, could they be used for anything or sold to like a small department somewhere, or do they
So
really know?
ETSB owns the actual radios because
Okay.
they pay the majority of the cost. We own a few that were extras for civilians, and they're going to have a program where if there's agencies interested in those, they will let us know and then we can sell them.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Chief, you can also elaborate a little bit that we don't own, we just buying the air equipment, we don't own the equipment.
So we don't own the equipment because they're paying the majority of the cost.
Peter? That was your question there?
Yeah.
So they're paying the cost,
And that they are still covering the airtime under
Right.
this contract.
well, they also own the equipment, we'll never own it.
Correct.
Let's. Any other questions? Do you have any questions about radios, CST, ETBS? No? All right, roll call.
Alderman Ames,
Yes.
Alderman Catalano,
Yes.
Alderman Currielli,
Yes.
Alderman Jacob,
Yes.
Alderman Messina,
Abstain.
Alderman Sizmarsky,
Yes,
Alderman Woods.
Yes.
that passes. Items to be considered at future meetings, Police Department rehab contract, December 8th. Anybody have anything else they'd like to add? There being none, I'll ask for a motion for adjournment.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
So move. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned.
I'd like to call the Public Works Committee to order. Please have the minute taker note that the same people are in attendance,
Plus yourself.
including myself. Yeah, that helps. First up is a approval of minutes for the meeting dated October 13th, 2022. I'll make that motion.
Second.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
That passes. Important recommendations. First up is an approval of a professional services agreement between the City of Wooddale and RJN Group for the Cluffstead Lift Station and Force Main improvements in an amount not to exceed $145,000.
Make that motion.
Second.
Any questions for the director? Mayor?
So, this was just the engineering, and then I forget the number, the cost. Is that a budgeted item this year, just out of curiosity? I know,
Director Lang?
It was not. We had known some repairs were needed to the lift station. However, if you recall, during CIP timing, we were holding off on any major lift station overhauls
Right.
as we were focusing on the I&I program. However, with the new high water user coming online, we feel with the added flows that it's necessary to make the improvements to the station at this time.
Any other questions?
yeah, just a follow-up.
Sure.
As far as this, nothing to do with the water pressure for the towers or anything like that? This is totally,
Correct. Separate systems. This is the sanitary side.
okay, just checking.
Any follow-ups? Any other follow? No, okay. I was gonna call you Congresswoman, that's kind of day I've had. Alderwoman Ames?
So can you just explain what a force main is as opposed to water main? Like, can you just explain what that is?
Sure. So typically, with sanitary and storm sewers, the sewer will flow by gravity, meaning it's from a higher elevation to a lower elevation. However, when you get to the lowest elevation and you can't move it any further and you still need to move it, you go to a wet well, and the lift station pumps it up to a higher elevation through a force main to get to a location where it can flow by gravity the rest of the way.
Okay, so,
Sure, go ahead.
so this is just for sanitary?
Correct.
This has nothing to do with water main? And then this is just the engineering costs, as the mayor said, for the
Correct.
project? Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Good, okay. Roll call, please, MK?
Alderman Ames.
Yes.
Alderman Catalano.
Yes.
Alderman Curriali.
Yes.
Alderman Jacob.
Yes.
Alderman Messina.
Yes.
Alderman Sizmarsky.
Yes.
Alderman Woods.
Yes.
And that passes. Items to be considered at future meetings, Well 6 rehabilitation on December 8th, WDFPDC intergovernmental agreement for Elizabeth Drive in December, and then RJN's I&I agreement in spring of 2023. Any other items anybody would want to add? Please, go ahead.
So I don't know if this is the right category for this, but can we look at getting some kind of lighting on the medallions at the Veterans Memorial Park? I know when that rehab was done, we were talking about it, but nothing's ever happened, and it's a beautiful park, but we just can't see the medallions.
Would that be Public Works or Safety?
I don't know.
Or,
I don't know what that
It
is.
would fall under Public Works. It had been discussed at the Streetscape Committee before, so we were kind of awaiting some direction from them. But we can look back into that, certainly.
What was it?
I think Alderman Sizmarsky
I
has.
wasn't-
Direction was given like 2 years ago, no?
Yes, it was. That's what I was gonna say. We budgeted it and we just didn't have anybody to do it.
So we,
Director Lang?
if I could, thank you, Chairman. We put that out to bid, and the bids came back, if you recall, extraordinarily high, so we were looking at some other options, perhaps solar. I don't think we ever got any definite direction from the Streetscape Committee, but if it's something that we want to proceed with at this time, we can definitely close that out.
Well, the
Solar.
direction was to move forward. The price we got was too high, which didn't mean stop, don't do nothing. I'm just saying.
Okay.
Noted, okay. So you have direction, I guess, to
Look into
revisit?
solar.
Yeah,
Look into solar too.
look into solar, revisit or look into solar?
Sounds good. We can circle back with that.
Thanks, Director. Mayor?
Yeah, back then, the expense was, I think, something with the pipe from the inside had to be, what was it, explosion-proof or some ridiculous term?
Correct, yeah, explosion-proof.
Is that what it was? And I thought, yeah, right, I thought we were gonna look at other options, but,
We did, and we looked at, boring a service underground and mounting conduit at the exterior, but that was pretty costly as well. So we'll find some options, and if it's necessary to bring back to the Public Works Committee, we'll do that. Otherwise, we'll proceed with what we find.
Alderman Catalano?
Can we, something like that, do it in-house?
It's possible. We'll look at various options, something solar-mounted, photometric
Okay.
lighting fixtures, perhaps we could do in-house, but we'll look at a few options, and we'll figure out how we want to proceed.
Any follow-ups?
No.
Okay, so we had a motion, we have a second.
One quick follow-up.
Sure.
Yeah, so it's actually, Director Lang, and I can't remember if I sent it to you or your predecessor, but I did send solar streetlights, and that same company makes solar wall packs that were pretty decent. If you don't have the link, I'll send it to you.
Sounds good. I'll touch base with you.
So we could have light for 100 days of summer in Wooddale. No, good idea. Any other items to be considered? Have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? Meeting adjourned.
I'd like to call the order of Finance Administration Committee. That the take note that the same council members are present. And I need a motion to approve the minutes of October 27, 2022.
Second?
Any corrections to the minutes? If there are none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next is a report and recommendation. Approval of a master service agreement between the City of Wooddale and Altruistic Technologies LLC for the IT Technology Assessment Project in an amount not to exceed $25,000. That is my motion.
Second.
And Director, we have a presentation, Mr. Wilson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Yes, we
ahead.
do. Tonight from Altruistic, we have Mr. Kedar Potdar to my right. He has a few slides to go through, what the process will be and what we're looking to get out of this project. I did put it in the memo. We've done this type of thing before when longtime employees have left. Not saying that anything was wrong, but just technology changes, things change, times change, and we want to make sure that we get a good benchmark for Mr. Stenson and his team to move forward, making sure that the city's positioned properly as, things are becoming more technologically advanced, people are getting more sophisticated, the bad actors, so I want to make sure we're positioned properly. So at this time, if it's okay, I'll turn it over to Mr. Potdar. Unless Mike, you want to say something? Okay.
Thank you, Brad. Hi, everybody. So I want to start with a quick story. I lived here in Wooddale. I lived actually in the Dominion Towers with my brother. And a few years ago, my brother moved out to LA. He lives in Orange County now. So on one of my trips, when I visited him, I ran across his neighbor, who's a director at a Jewish organization. It's a non-profit organization over there. And in one of our conversations, we started talking shop. One of the things that he started telling me is that they've been working with this one-man contracting company that has been handling all of their desktops, their servers, their network, and the things that that came across were comments from her. Really got me thinking about how organization functions, right? She would tell me things like, the person would tell them that you don't need a disaster recovery plan because I've got you covered, you got me, right? Why do you need a plan for that? They had her convinced that they are using the best or the latest version of Microsoft Office software, and they are paying the best or the lowest amount that their organization can. This was not just the one-off incident with her. I've heard a lot of customers, I've heard a lot of clients that have spoken very similar lines to me. Being here, if someone in your organization is thinking about that, then I think it's a really good thing, right? Because that just means that we are thinking about properly managing the function of IT. This is something that I hear from clients all the time. Like, are we spending amount of money on IT, and is it in alignment with what we want to do as an organization? Is our organization's technology confined with the best practices of the industry? Things like, is our security posture strong enough for threats that we don't know about? What are we actually going to get out of it? How can we improve our experience for not only our staff or the people who are there, but for the people within our community who we engage with from a day-to-day basis? Things that are not as common, but they are very prominent, and that should be addressed in a very tactical manner. If that is something that you guys are thinking about, and if that is something that you want to do, that means that you want to manage the performance of IT. But how can you manage the performance of IT if you cannot measure it? So the way to measure the performance of IT is by conducting an IT assessment. When you conduct an IT assessment, because we know today technology is involved with everything that we do in our business. What I'm using right now is also technology. Everything that we touch, everything that we have is technology. So by not understanding or by not having an assessment, a recent assessment or a regular assessment done, it's like driving our business with our eyes closed. That's probably not a really good idea. I mean, I would bet that it's not a really good idea. So conducting these assessments are actually a really good way of maintaining that goal, maintaining the motion forward for any of the businesses. Now, you might also want to note that not all IT assessments are same. They are different. So you have something called comprehensive assessments, and then you have something called targeted assessments. Comprehensive assessments are an overall picture of your IT. You know, it covers all aspects of technology and gives you a roadmap based on some other things that you want to do in the next 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, etc. Whereas targeted assessments are things like activities that you do at a deeper level. You know, somebody would say that, hey, I want to just make an assessment of our cybersecurity. I want to see, you know, how we are collecting and capturing data, or what we are doing with our storage. You know, if we have a lot of digital storage, what are we doing with that, and what are the best practices around that? Those will be some of the targeted assessments from a technology perspective. So you might want to ask, like, you know.
Can we get a
Is that
question there, Alderman Messina? Go ahead.
Yeah. I think this is a good presentation. I want to give context. By no means, I am just I guess I'm the pseudo-technology person somehow, but I'm not. Coming from my side, just for context, I think for our group, you kind of touched on some of the stuff. He's talking about some of the cybersecurity risks, which everybody here I'm sure knows about. We have Barracuda networks. Is that enough? The body cameras. For me, there's a lot of research that I've been doing. I'm not in that. I'm in analytics and AI, but a lot of that footage can get tampered with. What do they do with that data, right? Technically, it's 30 days that it sits in a cloud, but anything that sits on our servers, right? Credit cards, now that we're doing electronic payments, any of that's subject to get attacked in one of these attacks. The question I had, though, just to give context, but Brad probably knows this, when is the last time we actually had any type of assessment? When I asked Mike's predecessor, nobody seemed to know. When's the last time we actually had an assessment of this is what you own and this is who's using it?
Go ahead, Director Wilson.
I don't want to give the answer I want to give, so I'll say since I've been here, I am unaware of having performed one.
Okay.
So I've been here 15 and a half years, and aside from maybe the previous IT director going around with a notepad, we've never had a formal third-party outside company come in and do anything of this nature.
For whatever it's worth.
Go ahead.
Sorry. For whatever it's worth, they're kind of like my worst nightmare, because a lot of what technologies do, and I know this happened, I won't even say, I think my opinion is that I think it may have happened, it happens a lot in a lot of towns and a lot of cities, and it happens a lot of companies where it's like, we'll just give you everything. You know, and I will give you a crazy price by what we call enterprise agreement for all of everybody in the city. If you buy all these Microsoft Office licenses, I'll give you a crazy deal. At the end of the day, maybe 20% use them. So it's like, are we really spending the money? So you're kind of like my worst nightmare, but I get why we want to do it. I just didn't know how many years. I know it'd been a while. When I asked Nick, he's like, to your point, he just said like, I just kind of know. I think his comment was, I just kind of know, which is a little scary, but that's all. Just wanted to add some context to what you're kind of outlining. Thank you.
Alderman Jacob.
Just, also, I'm in the insurance industry, and I know, Brad, we had a issue with getting our cyber security insurance. Did we not this year? I mean, we had a little problem trying to get it.
Go ahead.
So just to be clear, we did get it. It was a little touch and go. There were some things that the industry was requiring that we had not yet turned on, but we were able to get that turned on in time to get coverage. Yeah, but that was a problem.
Well, I just want to, again, just as Alderman Messina did, just give context to that. I know insurance companies are really hounding people on cybersecurity, and insurance rates are skyrocketing, and a lot of people can't even get insurance, a lot of big corporations. So it's very important, to have cybersecurity threats assessed.
I'm sorry, continue with your presentation. Thank you.
So, as I was saying, the assessment that we are talking about here is a comprehensive assessment. It is not targeted towards any one specific area. So you might ask, what does it actually include? So when I had an initial conversation with Mr. Wilson and Mike, there was high-level understanding that was given to me about some of the details of technology landscape that exists in the city of Wooddale. And I'm proposing a comprehensive assessment across the 4 areas mentioned. System security, operations, documentation, and performance. Now, each of these areas actually dig deeper into them. Things like, we will assess things like what are the password policies, how do they expire? Like, do we have anything that is maintained? How many characters are there? Is there a special character required? So on and so forth. There are business continuity and disaster recovery. Are there any set documentation and plans for that? If yes, when was the last time it was tested? Because having a plan and testing and making sure that the plan is actually validated is 2 different things. A lot of companies write a plan, but because it is never validated, when the disaster actually happens, that plan is not valid, and then they are not able to actually do the continuity or the disaster recovery. So making sure that those things can be done is extremely important. On-premise storage, I think we talked about with Alderman Messiah just mentioned about the digital storage in cloud, as well as what is on our existing server. Are we utilizing that effectively? Right? Do we have a requirement that something needs to be there for 30 days, but some other things need to be there for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years? What kind of storage are we using? So on and so forth. Right? So we will do that. Is the hardware that we are using, which is either on-premise or in cloud, and I'm not 100% sure what all you are using here, Mike, but is that scalable enough? Like tomorrow, if we decide that we need to do X, Y, or Z, is our current hardware going to be enough, or are we going to propose a capital expense for that? So all of these things will be considered as part of the assessment, and then my recommendations will follow based on some of the things that are there. So there is a long-term benefits that a lot of customers would get out of this. There is a bunch over here. I don't want to go through all of them, but some of the benefits that actually people get out of there is like, what does the future roadmap for technology look like? It's as simple as that. If we start doing a transformation project, that future roadmap is something that any company, for example, if you hire a PwC or a Deloitte, they would want that, hey, this is where we envision ourselves going. You can kind of give it to them. What does the current landscape for technology look like? You kind of get that. It's like, this is what our current landscape look like. This is the inventory of all our hardware, software, everything that we own, right? You get an overview of what my hardware scalability is. So the whole idea over here being that if the technology team is looking at making certain capital investment, then they either receive the validation or they receive the validation in the opposite direction, meaning that hey, either don't do it or do it. This is looking correct, right? One of the things that customers have told me is
one question. Go ahead, Alderman Messina.
Just so I'm clear, so you don't do any of the work. If you found certain gaps, you would point them out in the report, but kind of like a home inspection, you don't actually fix it.
That's correct.
Okay.
So I work with partners who can fix all of this work, but I don't personally get involved. Even if I do get involved, I usually get involved from a oversight perspective. So I'll kind of engage with you to make sure that the partner is doing what is recommended in the report. Okay. To make sure all the boxes are checked. I don't personally start getting in there and start doing things.
Okay. I just want to know where we're getting for the money.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, continue, please.
Thank you. I think one of the benefits that Anita, my brother's neighbor, she mentioned that she received, which she was very happy about, was actually being able to predict her technology spend. Because initially with their guys before, they were never able to predict their technology spend, because it would be like, they did not know exactly how old their desktop computers or laptop computers were, so they would use it until it broke, basically. So they were never able to budget. So they budgeted a bucket. Sometimes that bucket was, left unused. Sometimes that bucket was way overrun. So there was no real thing left in her hand from a control perspective. When I engaged with her and when I told her that there is a different way of doing this, her costs were very much predictable. She could say that, okay, these are the set of desktops that she is going to have to replace in 2020, in 2021, in 2022, and they put in a process for being able to do that. So I think that's a really good thing. Up to now, the benefits and everything sounds good, but like how do we actually get this going? How do we actually do this? So there is actually a 4-step process to success. We start with the discovery process. Discovery process helps me unearth everything that we have from a technology perspective. In one of my initial meetings with Mike, I actually asked Mike, hey, it would be helpful if you can share things with me right when we start. So, if there is an aged even, but a business continuity or a disaster recovery plan, I would like to start taking a look at that. A current state IT, even if it is 10 years old, 5 years old, I would still like to take a look at that. Like, how often do you guys buy a computer? Do you guys plan for it? Actually, what is an end of life for that? Do you guys have any such things? I would like to take a look at that, because that's what I will do in the discovery process. I review all of these things from a lens of what is it that I need to worry about? What is it that things are going to be correct? What things are not going to be correct? Because that's something that I will do in the next phase, which is the evaluation stage. Well, I actually sit with Mike, with Brad, with some of the other stakeholders to kind of understand that, okay, what are we looking to do from an assessment perspective? When was the last time an assessment was done? And I think I hear it hasn't been done for a while. So kind of set a baseline of where we should be compared from city compared to others. Yes, sorry. Go ahead.
Mayor, go ahead.
I got a question. So we're still probably finishing up ERP and the whole system. Wasn't there securities and whatnot built into that when we purchased that whole system? I don't know, I'm not an IT guy, so.
Yeah, so we're still in process with some components of the ERP
You
system.
need to,
More specifically, executive time and time management. We're in that process and human capital management, but there is security built into the Tyler Munis software that's on-prem, yes.
okay. I'm just curious, because I know how much we spent on that thing, and I'm like, do we not have something?
Okay. Go ahead, Alderman Messina.
So would part of his evaluation cover the current engagement we have with like the ERP implementation that we're going through? Would he touch that or no?
I think one of the things that we're faced with currently or imminently with ERP is to cloud or not to cloud.
Yeah.
And what that means. So I think that certainly would be part of it. I know Mr. Stenson already identified some internal server gymnastics that we were able to clean up to help performance on the system. So yeah, I don't know how far down the rabbit hole we would go with the actual Tyler contract, but from a high-level standpoint, like I said, I know we are, and the cloud or not the cloud is an issue entity-wide, but specifically with ERP and what it means for versioning and updates and things of that nature. So I think, like you said, holistically, I think it'll be addressed. I don't know that he'll specifically dive into the minutia of that contract, but I think as we're looking at the entity in totality, it would be addressed, yes.
Thank you.
So after the evaluation process, in which I'll conduct the several interviews and I'll get an understanding of what it is, where do we need to go, I'll start an analysis of what is the industry best practice compared to other organizations your size, and then based on that I'll put my recommendations together. My recommendations is not just one report, but it's actually a set of deliverables. So there will be artifacts that I deliver in addition to an executive summary. At the end of the engagement, that deliverable package is what will help everyone understand as to what is it that where we stand. The report will kind of help us understand that this is where some of the assessment findings were. The artifacts will help Mike and his team understand that these are some of the action items that we need to take, and they can kind of do it from a prioritization perspective, from a planning perspective as well. So this is, I believe, this is where we are. Now you might wonder why me. So I just put a little bit about myself here. I have about 25 years of experience working in technology. I have worked with companies like Microsoft and Capgemini. I have industry depth. I have been with the technology scale for a long time. I have access to resources. I believe Alderman Messina asked about, will I be doing this work? Like I said, for this particular engagement, I wouldn't, but being in the network, I have access to resources who can partner with me and bring those resources in if you guys do decide to move forward with implementing some of those recommendations. And I like to do this work. I'm passionate about technology, and I'm a fun working guy. So I do have some case studies that I can talk about if you guys are interested, but we don't necessarily have to. But again, this is the Anita case study at the Jewish Federation of Orange County. I wrote over here about the IT spend that they were able to control, but there were a lot of other things that they actually got out of that engagement once we completed that assessment. So their biggest challenge or their biggest thing that I felt and even Anita felt was that they were able to get the control on their spend, and every year they were now not running like headless chicken, if you will, where they did not know how much money is going to be spent in technology. And it was a very straightforward assessment. It took about 8 weeks for this particular assessment to complete, because it's a much smaller organization. I think the next one is it's a little different. It's a targeted assessment. This is for an organization called Protectors of Tool Springs in Nevada. So this organization actually had outsourced all of their web, front-end event management and fundraising systems to an agency. And internally, because it was a small organization, nobody knew what this infrastructure was and how to manage it, if the agency is doing what they were supposed to be doing from their contract perspective. So when I engaged with them, I actually engaged with their website director, the engagement director, and the social media director, and identified what the strategic goals were. Well, turns out that they were actually looking to do an expansion of their website, and they were wanted to actually integrate all three of those things that I mentioned on top. They wanted to integrate their fundraising platform, their events platform within their website. So they were looking at doing a big overhaul, so to speak, of their website to bring everything together. And they did not know if their infrastructure would even support anything like that. So after that assessment, I helped them fix some of the challenges that they were seeing in their current website, and then gave them a roadmap and a project plan of how they should move forward with doing that, and so that now they have an understanding of, okay, this is how they will move forward. This is actually all done. They are already live with their new website and the events platform and the fundraising solution. I do have two other references that I haven't talked about over here. One of them is Assistance K9. It is a Nathaniel J. Foundation organization where I actually did an assessment of their CRM system and worked with a partner company to help them implement Salesforce. And then the other one is the Covenant Foundation in New York, where I actually did a very targeted cybersecurity assessment for them. I think those are all the slides that I had. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that presentation. Currently, Director Wilson, do every employee that has a computer, do they have an entrust key to get in? Go ahead.
No.
No. So they just have to log out, or when they log in, nobody knows who's logging in?
Alt Control Delete, username, password, enter.
Okay.
I know what you're talking about, but yeah, no, we don't have it. No.
Well, that's probably one of the recommendations that we'll probably need, right?
It's a strong possibility.
And as far as our water treatment plant, what safeties do we have there? I mean, with the cyber attack going, what kind of safeties do we have there?
Yeah, I'd have to probably defer to Director Lang on that, but
Okay.
I also not sure that we want to tell people what our security systems are at
No,
the
I
treatment
understand
plant.
that,
So,
right. But we do have
exist.
safety,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So-
they exist, yeah.
Okay.
Hesitant to talk about it.
Alderman Woods.
Yeah, for the layperson, the construction guy, this assessment, is it gonna start with like an inventory of what we have, both from a hardware perspective and a software perspective, both hard assets and third-party vendors that plug into the system, right? You're gonna do a full overhaul?
In a sense, that's how it works, yes.
Okay, and
That's
then
the
is
first
there
one.
gonna be any visual documents to produce that are gonna show how our system, like the architecture of our system, how that's put together? That's kinda gonna almost be memorialized that our staff can look at? Because
Yes.
I
so-
know how, all the different things we have working, and I don't know that we have that piece of information.
Yes, so as part of the assessment, one of the artifacts is the current state technology heat map. So it will actually show what are all of the technology stuff that we have within the IT organization. So it will say that, okay, we are using this set of infrastructure over here, and this is being used for this. We are using this set of infrastructure over here, and this is being used for this. So for example, I think we had a conversation about ERP. So there would be like one box that says, this is ERP, and then we'll have some nomenclature around it as to what kind of server it is on, what kind of operating system it uses, so on and so forth. Then there will be others like that. Now I only know about the ERP, that's why I'm mentioning the ERP, but once I have more understanding of what all we do, there will be a visual diagram that actually shows what the current IT architecture is.
Okay, and so if I can, so when you finish with that report and assessment, are there then recommendations of what we need to do?
Yes.
And I think you touched on budgeting, so I'm assuming then there'd be some hierarchical budgeting scenarios in there too, and what's more important, which thing should come first, and which things need to be maybe linked together as we're talking about cloud, right? We have probably 4 or 5 different things here that would require, substantial cloud storage.
So that would depend when I do in my phase 2, when I meet with the stakeholders to identify what are some of the goals that we want to address within the next 1, 2, or 5 years. I will get a priority, so to speak, from them, right? Because based on that is when I make my recommendations as to, okay, this is where your dollars need to be invested. That would be based on, a recommendation would be based on that. It's like, hey, if you are looking to go, for example, a good example would be like the chairman brought, that, hey, we don't have multi-factor authentication, and we need to have some sort of multi-factor authentication to prevent a cybersecurity incident, or to prevent a phishing incident that happens within the organization. So I would say my first recommendation with the highest priority would be that. Now again, it might not be, because if I uncover something else, but for example, that would be something that I would say. But it will be based on the knowledge that I gather with the various interviews and the various meetings that I have.
Okay, and if I could follow up.
Go
So you mentioned that would be in phase 2, so once we go through phase 1, what does phase 2 look like? Is that another?
I was talking about phase 2 as in the 4-step process.
Okay.
The second step is where I actually talk to it. It's
All
only
right,
one-
so it's
one
all
phase.
within, all right,
We're
thank you.
waiting for the got you.
Yeah.
That's why I said,
right.
are you doing the work? Because I'm waiting for the big, here you go, here's a $500,000 project, but no, that's all just part of the 4 steps.
Yes.
Okay.
Alderman Jacob?
As far as the first step was security, so are you gonna do any like penetration testing of our systems, any cybersecurity testing, or?
No. So as part of this, what we usually do is I'll ask a question as to, okay, hey, when was the last cybersecurity testing done, right? From my initial understanding, I know also that, there are certain security measures already in place. When we do a targeted cybersecurity assessment, right, that's when we actually do some of those things, where we do an external penetration testing, we'll do an internal penetration testing, we'll do a bunch of different things. We'll do like a behavior analysis thing, where we want to track somebody's behavior and then emit that behavior on another device, and so on and so forth. But for a comprehensive all IT assessment, we will not do that. We will do it based on interviews as to, okay, what you have and what you don't.
Go ahead.
And the next question, you had said you're gonna come up with recommendations. Are you gonna have, costs associated with those recommendations, or will you be able to say, this recommendation is gonna cost $50,000? Will you be able to say that, or will you say you need to hire such and such a company, and then they'll have to give you an estimate or a quote for what that
The
would cost?
latter. I would say that, it's best if you work with this partner or that partner. I can make recommendations of the partners who you work with, but I cannot put a dollar amount to that, because if you work with a partner that is much more expensive, then that dollar amount will be completely off.
Would something like that go out to bid? Director Wilson?
Yeah, I think once we get the recommendations and we get the scope of what we need to embark upon, yeah, then we can map that out through the CIP operating budget and collectively amongst ourselves.
Any other questions? Alderman Corrielli, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Just one simple question. You mentioned expenses for travel and lodging. What travel and lodging is involved?
Part of the standard agreement that
Okay.
I do whatever I live in Bloomingdale, so
Okay,
there's no travel and lodging.
thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? So, thank you for your presentation, Mr. Padar. Thank you, appreciate it. And so I already made a motion to approve the IT Technology Assessment Project. So I've already made that motion, not to exceed in the amount of $25,000. Do I have a second?
Good.
Okay, let's have a roll call, please.
Alderman Ames.
Yes.
Alderman Catalano.
Yes.
Alderman Curriali.
Yes.
Alderman Jacob.
Yes.
Alderman Messina.
Yes.
Alderman Sizmarsky.
Yes.
Alderman Woods.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you. And items to consider at future meetings. I'm sorry?
Letter of credit. Letter of credit.
Where did it go? Oh, here it is. There you go. Found it. Okay, next is letter of credit, LOC conversion. Compensation, I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, I don't have those anymore.
Okay, get me glasses. Okay, go ahead, Director Wilson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, this came up, the existing line of credit we have with Itasca Bank, when we issued it in 2017, had a 5-year life. It comes due December 22nd of this year. In a previous manager's report, we had noted that staff was intending to pay this off and then let it expire organically. In that report, we also said if anybody had any questions or thoughts to the contrary, please let the manager and myself know, and we would bring it to committee and see how the council wanted to proceed. There was a couple of comments saying that perhaps we should look to keep it open. And since the line of credit was originally opened with council action, formal action at a meeting, we would need that again to effectively extend and renegotiate the LOC with Itasca Bank for presumably another 5-year term. So that's why we're here this evening, to see what the will of the council is, whether to extend for 5 years or let it close as it would have naturally on December 22nd.
Mayor, go ahead.
So Brad, refresh my memory. Where's this money coming out of if we're gonna pay it off?
Right.
Because we've got a couple properties. Well, one we know is coming forward and another one may be happening or something, but where's the money coming from if we don't, if we have to pay before we close deals?
Go ahead.
Sure, so at this point, the money would be coming from the Land Acquisition Fund, which is funded by the general fund, absent any land disposition monies. So ultimately, if you strip it down, it would be the general fund in the short term until these properties theoretically would be sold early, mid next year. And then we would just reimburse the general fund with the proceeds from those land sales. But in the short term, it would be the general fund until those transactions have been.
Go ahead, Mayor.
So, honestly, I'd like to pay it off, but we've got CIP coming out, budget. I'd like to get the money from, if those sales, if they, one should be happening next year. We'll see about the second one. The question becomes, if you take 1.3 out of the general fund, so now you put us at just above 6 months of cash. So that's gonna dial down the CIP real quick, depending on when those sales come back. Right?
Go ahead.
So we had budgeted for it with the anticipation that some of the land would move a little bit quicker, but yeah, you are correct. In the short term, it could potentially put a little bit of a damper on the CIP for a year.
Right. That's what I thought.
Alderman Woods?
Yeah, well, I would love to pay it off too. We live in a different world today and things changing. It's good to have the option. The cost is minimal to move forward with it, just so we have that option. So So it would be my recommendation that staff renegotiates that. We can pay it off in 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months if we want, but at least we have the option, because other things could happen, just like we had the bridge pop up on us, we had the recent sewer pump lift station or whatever pop up on us. You don't know what's gonna come down. So to have that as an option, I would recommend that we have staff look into extending or renegotiating that for another 5 years.
Second that.
Okay, that's your motion then?
It is.
Second.
Second. Alderman Jacob?
Yeah, I would agree with Alderman Woods. I think Alderman Messina and I had talked to you, Brad, about this. Keeping it open, I mean, with everything going on in town, you know, even if we're paying, you know, have it paid down mostly, just to keep it open and have that line of credit versus closing it, and something comes up and then we have to apply for the credit line again and go through the whole process from scratch. You know, I recommend that we keep it open.
Mayor?
So Brad, couple questions. If we do this and extend it 5 years, we can shut it down any time, correct?
Go ahead.
Correct.
And the other thing is, so just before us, the lift station came up, and I believe, if I remember right, the number was about 700,000 to fix, and that's not a budgeted item as of right now, so it's gonna go into the CIP. And we just had an assessment we're doing, and God only knows what that IT stuff is gonna cost. That's why I'm just like, and I know where we're at. We still have just over 7.5 months of cash or something. We start knocking out $1 million, we're gonna be right around 6. Our goal is to never fall below 6, and I don't think this council's ready to go under 6, so I'm in agreement that we keep this going.
Okay, any other questions?
You want a roll call?
If there are none, so do we need a roll call on that? Yes. A roll call to keep it open.
Alderman Ames?
Yes.
Alderman Catalano?
Yes.
Alderman Curriali?
Yes.
Alderman Jacob?
Yes.
Alderman Messina?
Yes.
Alderman Sizmarsky?
Yes.
Alderman Woods?
Yes.
Motion carries. Next is items to consider at future meetings. We have the audit report coming up in December, and the CIP coming up January 12th, and fiscal year ending budget 2024 coming up February 23rd is there, of next year. Is there any other items to consider at future meetings? If there are none, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor, say
Aye.
opposed. We're adjourned. Thank you.